Okay, welcome, Brooke. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always nice talking to you, Paula.
I love talking to you too, which is why I wanted to invite you on because I've just loved watching your journey. I love watching what you do. And I think it's a really good conversation to have so that any other photographers that might be in a similar position to where you have been over the last maybe 5 or 10 years of your career might kind of get a little bit of inspiration to be able to make some changes and be a bit brave. Great stuff. So,
Or
what I
just
wanted
scared
to
to death and doing it anyway.
And this is the thing, right? It's funny. I was listening to a podcast the other week and they were talking about how confidence comes after you've done the thing. It can't come before, right?
Well, I guess then it's not brave, right?
Yeah,
You're just
exactly.
doing it.
You're just doing it, make it up afterwards. So, what I'd like to do first is maybe just for the people who are listening, is just get you to kind of like introduce yourself and just let us know how it is that you've landed in this wonderful world of photography.
I think, like most photographers, it's kind of a life sentence. I got my first camera when I was 8, not to date myself, but I shot on film in high school. It was always a hobby. It was always something that I was really drawn to, but I couldn't like quite put my finger on what to do with that. And so then, long story short, my husband at the time, we were living in the Virgin Islands and I started working in hospitality. And that was kind of my introduction into the world of events, bigger, weddings, corporate travel, that kind of thing. But thereby also my introduction into professional photography because I noticed there was a photographer at all these events. And so that was kind of the impetus to maybe make something of it. And then, so I worked in that for years and years. When Matt and I moved back to Colorado, gosh, now 10 years ago, I was looking for work. Nothing ever really seemed like a good fit. And I was like, I'm going to try this photography thing. And if we're being perfectly honest, I think I was more going to try it for it not to work so then I could justify growing up and getting a real job. And so I went back to school, took some classes at a community college, which I'm a huge advocate for. I think they're great. And from there, I actually got really interested in architectural photography. That was what I wanted to do more than anything. And so I reached out to this photographer. His name's McCory James at Elevate Photography here in Denver, and just wanted to assist him. And he was very gracious, let me come ask him some questions for about an hour one day in his office. I began assisting him for architecture shoots. That then led into assisting for weddings, which was not what I wanted to do. And then the joke was totally on me because I fell in love with it and ended up working for Elevate for 8 years. But in that journey, I also kind of realized towards the end of that it was just time to do my own thing and kind of take more ownership of my time and autonomy of my work. And that was kind of the steps of that.
Yeah, so you've had maybe a different journey to a lot of photographers because you have worked solely in someone else's business for quite a while. How do you feel like your experience maybe is better for having had that experience? Like, did you have much to do with them on the back end of the business side of things, or were you just solely in there in the photography space?
I did end up, I mean, I said all the time, I'm very much standing on the shoulders of giants. And I don't know if it's a Denver specific thing, but I've gotten really lucky in the community that I have specifically in the photography world. So when I started at Elevate, I was just an assistant and then became a second shooter at weddings, then became a lead photographer at weddings, and ultimately ended up becoming the principal photographer there for a couple of years. So in that, I really saw the inner workings of the business. And my boss at the time, he's one of those guys, he was business first, photographer second. And I always took note of that, of like, that's the key. Because I mean, Elevate's been around since 2001,
Yeah.
so to be a 23-year-old business in the photography world is kind of unheard of. And so that was a big, big moment for me. And I like to think one of my superpowers is I'm smart enough to know I don't know anything. And so I was really keen to just pay attention to the steps of things and how you handle conflict, how you handle when someone's disappointed, but also how you run your business and that it is a business, not just a hobby. So otherwise it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I think there's two things that came to me. Like I've got a very similar journey to you in that like I grew up with my family business. So I got that kind of like firsthand experience and was lucky enough to be mentored by other people. And to that, what I want to say is that there are a lot of photographers who are quite generous around and who will let you into their business or who would love to have a young and up and coming photographer who would, you like I'm sure there was no bad bones when you decided to go out on your own, right? I'm pretty sure that they would have been so fully supportive of that.
They totally were. I mean, I also gave him like an 8-month notice. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there was that as well. But yeah, I think I tried to operate from a perspective of abundance. And I think that's a common thread in, I don't know if it's an industry thing. I know the people that I spend time with and that have absolutely been mentors for me have always operated from that. There's enough work for everybody. And so I've never really been faced with any like gatekeeping, so to speak. It's always felt very community over competition.
Yeah.
And I've really embraced that and appreciated that. And have also tried to do the same now that I have my own business.
Oh, I think that's such a wonderful way to be. I just want to say for anybody that's listening, don't be afraid to go to a photographer that you actually admire and offer to assist and hold their bags. And even if you are actively building your business on the side, I know for me, like I've had so many young photographers or want to be photographers or would be or whatever training and that kind of thing coming in, even if it's just for a short season, because I'm always looking for people who can work within my business and who are eager. And no one's more eager than someone who's wanting to build their own business, right? Like I'm sure you were, as you said, you were kind of like actively learning and watching, but I'm sure you worked your ass off for them at the same time, right?
Oh, yes. Shooting weddings in the Rocky Mountains, like you can't breathe and you're dragging bags and lights. And at the time, I mean, this was 10 years ago. So at the time we had huge lights and really heavy camera bags. And, there was a lot of blisters and sore feet at the end of the day, but it's such a, it's such a, it's such a love filled thing, like it's a cool environment you're a part of. I was in, the photographers I was working with were wonderful. So I never begrudged it. I always left feeling amped and energized and tired, but energized at the same time, which was kind of how I knew to run with this. I was like, that just feels good,
Yeah. And I mean, I think we're all in the business of wanting to take good care of people. Like, you fall in love with your couples. Like, granted, you don't fall in love with every wedding that you do, but you try and find something about it to love. And you do want to go over and above when you're doing weddings, right? I think that's just the nature. You have to be that way inclined in order to do weddings, I think.
Do it for a long time, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the ones you don't like, you just never see them again. And it's fine.
100%. 100%. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the transition to personal branding, because what was it about personal branding? I guess when you're establishing your business, you obviously are still doing weddings in your own business, right? Just for everyone listening.
I am. I'm phasing out. So I'm kind of doing, 5 less a year. My goal is to not shoot weddings in 2026. So my plan is for next year to be my last season. But personal branding, it kind of just felt like of the roads of my life coming together. My degrees are in marketing and finance. So it does bring, like, I'm actually using those degrees my poor parents paid all that money for. But just really embracing the consumer behavior side of things. And there's like a science and kind of a recipe to that, which I find really interesting. And then it combines the portrait work of weddings, but also I now really vibe with my clients. And I think that's maybe a common thing with photographers. I know I've heard you mention, like, once, your daughter grows up, you don't really shoot families anymore. And then once you kind of get in your 30s, 40s, weddings don't really vibe like they used to. And so the clients that I have now in the world that I'm kind of spinning in now, I'm part of it. Like I am my client. And so even clients that have nothing to do with what I do, like I have a repeat client and he does mineral rights. I don't know anything about mineral rights, or I didn't, and I do now. And that's fascinating. And so it's just kind of all roads of photography and education sort of coming together, that it just really made sense for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's definitely, like, the word that you said there for me is vibe. Like whether you're into the science or the whatever of the finance or anything of anybody's business, there's just like a shared passion that you're both kind of working towards the same goal, right?
Totally. It's very much like a real recognize real, like it's, and I have those conversations with my clients all the time, like, oh, quarterly taxes are due, or, how are you handling this? And I think in having those conversations, it also helps make them more comfortable in front of the camera, because they don't see me as a camera. They see me as a person and a business owner and someone who's right there, in the shit with them. And so I think having that commonality really does breed comfort. And that's always the goal, right? Of you want people to feel at ease in your photos. So it's just kind of nice that we're all on the same page.
Such a nice thing that you raised there, because I think when I was doing portraits, I always felt a little bit an us and them thing, that I had to break down that wall in the first sort of
Mhm.
half an hour of the shoot. But there's something about personal branding, as you say, where I genuinely feel like I'm part of someone's team. Do you know? I'm like, I'm working for this and I'm going to, yes, what can we do? Let's do this. It's so exciting. I genuinely getting as passionate for them about what we can do as a team member would, do you know? So I just love that you bring that up.
There's no better feeling than seeing your photos on their website and watching them shine with it too, and having people come back to you and it's like, oh, I raised my prices, or it's I don't know. Yeah, it's just really, it just fills my cup.
Yeah. Being able to see their business grow. And as you say, being able to see them actually like stepping up in the ladder of their own business
Mhm.
is so cool. I've got heaps of clients that like, they'll go, oh, I won an award because I had the confidence to do this last year. And I kind of can trace it back to that photo shoot with you. And you're like, oh, goosebumps. Like, serious?
It is amazing. And I know you've touched on it before in previous podcasts because I've listened to all of them, but having particularly female clients that are, our age-ish or a little older, and having them say, I never saw myself that way, or,
Mm,
oh, you made me look beautiful. And I'm like, it's a camera, not a wand, babe. You did that.
mm,
But we provide them the platform to see it. We're not
mm.
changing anything. We're not, they are who they are, but we just kind of give them that mirror, so to speak. And that's just so, so cool.
I am like shivering again. So, what I would love to talk about a little bit with you and just unpack a tiny bit is that transition from working for somebody else for so long and then suddenly, and the confidence that comes with sort of like working underneath someone's banner. What happened to you when you made the transition into running your own business? Was there anything that you kind of like came up against that you hadn't preempted, or do you feel like the transition was a smooth one for you and a natural progression?
That's a good question. I think again, this is probably pretty common. There was a wild amount of imposter syndrome of like, what am I doing? But like you, my parents also are small business owners. So the idea wasn't totally foreign or totally scary. And because I had given such a significant notice before I left my previous company, and I knew I had 8 months of income, that definitely insulated a few things. But it just feels different. It's mine. It's my name on the door, which is terrifying, but also just really invigorating. And it's kind of one of those, I quit my 9 to 5 to work 24/7, but it's not like, I don't resent it. I don't
Yeah.
like, I'm traveling for work right now, but it's exciting because I'm like, someone paid to fly me to Charlotte, North Carolina to photograph an event, like it just feels different. And I don't really know how to like, I don't know how to word it that it's like kind of encompassing, but it's invigorating, not exhausting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. I talk about this all the time because I was saying it to one of my clients as I was driving in the car with a shoot the other day. And I was like, oh God, I can't do anything after 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock on the computer in my brain. And we're like at 4 o'clock driving in the car to a photo shoot. I was like, oh, photo shoots fill my cup. Like they don't,
Totally
like
different.
this is such a different bag. And it's the same in your business, right? So when you're working for yourself, yes, there obviously are parts of it that are stressful and there are parts of it that are tiring and there are parts of it that are jading, but your cup is full because it's all yours.
It's all yours. And it also feels different when people compliment it, that it
Mm,
just, you're like, I really did that, because the company I worked for years, love Elevate Photography. If you're in Denver, call them. They're an amazing place. But it always felt like they were complimenting Elevate or the
mm,
company because that was so established and I was just an employee. And, I felt more like a name tag. And now I'm like, no, you hired me because you liked me and we hit it off and we have a relationship and we continue a relationship, and that's the thing too. When you have repeat clients that come back, you're like, really? Okay. Thanks.
yeah,
It's just so great.
that's great. I want to talk a little bit there just and touch on, I guess you sort of talked about it earlier and you said that Elevate as a company really had nailed the business aspect of things. And I think there are those two distinct parts between, there is the role of the photographer. And I can understand why you were thinking that they were maybe complementing the business because there are so many other aspects to running a business, not just the photo shoot day, right? Like there's the admin experience of them coming in beforehand. There's the overall feeling of the brand. There's the way that you feel supported on the customer journey. There's the way you feel looked after the photo shoot. So from your perspective of coming into a business, where did you feel like you kind of maybe needed like a kind of a lift in terms of what did you need to learn coming into your own business that you maybe skills that you didn't have, or was there anything that was unexpected that you didn't realize that you might need to do?
Not necessarily unexpected, but just really making sure that my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed. Because I'm like, there's no adult here. Like it's just me. So there's no one other than the IRS once a year being like, hey, you really messed up. It's just the like legit accountability of I have to make sure things happen because working for the other company, we had, there's all kinds of things in place. There's someone behind me being like, hey, you have this due, or, we had an in-house editor, so I didn't do any of that. And there's just a lot of accountability checkpoints. And now that I'm in charge, which is crazy, it's just really making sure that I'm on my game all the time because it's my game.
Yeah.
So it's just that.
So has there been any parts of the business so far that you've been able to outsource that you felt like, yep, I'm good to let that one go, or anything like that?
I'm working on outsourcing editing. I have embraced AI editing, which is such a game changer. I'm also in the process of hiring a VA, thanks to you. I think that because where I am right now is like I have this quote freedom, right, of owning my own company, but I also am panicky if I can't access my email or if I don't have Wi-Fi. I'm like, I'm missing something. And so I think just having those two things where all I focus on is the client interaction and the shooting and kind of the nurturing of relationships that help my business. Mm-hmm. I think that's really where I need to be. And my husband's always talking about what's the best use of your time and talent. And so that's my like north all the time of like, what's my time and talent? Where do I need to spend my energy? Because I'm also becoming very well aware of no matter how many to-do lists I make, which there are like 4 around my laptop as we speak, there are only so many hours in the day. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to get to a point where I'm okay letting things go and I'm okay living my life knowing there are things that still need to be done.
Yeah, it's a good place to be because I mean, that's one thing I will say to you is that, and I remember saying this to an ex-partner of mine about 10 years ago when he just started a business and it was very successful in the first 2 years, but he'd never worked for himself before. And I had to say to him, honey, there will always be a to-do list. It's always going to be there. You need to learn that about small businesses. You'll never get on top of it. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. And that's it. Like you really do just have to, I'm trying to embrace more like business hours because I work from home so much and that's turned into I live at work, not I work from home. Mm-hmm. And so I think boundaries are really important in all relationships, including the one you have with your company.
Yeah,
there has
you have
to be
with your laptop.
And my AirPods, like these two things are with me all the time.
So I just wanted to ask you, we've sort of dancing around a little bit, but I wanted to come back to, I guess, the transition for you as a photographer into the world of branding from the craft of it. Did you find it was an easy enough adaptation of your physical camera skills and your, personal skills on the shoot day? Was that an easy transition?
So much easier than weddings because you can control everything. Right? Like you don't have to do a 12-person wedding party at noon in terrible lighting outside where it's windy and it might rain, or in Colorado, it might snow. It's having the control of everything to me has made it feel so much easier. And I'm like, oh, I didn't overshoot that to death because 1,000 reasons, it's really felt like a culmination of all the things weddings kind of taught me of like, shooting reception space details. I'm like, cool, I got your filler photos and portrait work, obviously. And even like my love of architectural photography, I think has really helped like in finding Airbnbs or locations or, whatever. It's in a lot of ways to me, it feels so much easier because it's so much more calm. I have a relationship with that client by the time we get there because I've talked to him or her at least 3 or 4 times on top of a questionnaire and all that. And it feels like I'm I'm more the puppet master of it all, as opposed to, and more proactive as opposed to being reactive, which I feel like often wedding days are.
Oh, you are speaking my language, girlfriend. It's so funny because
There's going to be a mass exodus. Yeah.
I was writing copy for our new sort of launch of Academy, and I was like, it's so hard to articulate, but I do think that there's a level of taking control of every aspect of the shoot that you don't have with most other genres. And I don't want to, I never want to poo-poo anything else, but I've been through the full gamut of most of the different kind of ways that we can work, particularly in the domestic market. And I just don't think that anything else gives you as much creative input and creative control, right?
Yeah, it's almost like a podcast, right? Like you control where it's happening, but then it's just a conversation. And the photos happen and you guys are, often I usually end brand shoots at a bar because that's just like convenient to have a drink with them. But even that, like it's meant to be fun and it feels very conversational. And my goal is always, and it's true with weddings too, but particularly with brand clients, I'm like, I want it to feel like we're hanging out and we just so happen to get some photos, so it just kind of, there's a real zen to the whole thing that I don't experience in any other genre of photography. Because I shoot a lot of events as well, which is its own beast and a very cool thing. But brand photography has a really unique, just, yeah, like zen, for lack of a better word. It just feels very, it feels like we're always set up for success. I never walk into them nervous or like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Or, I always know we're going to walk away with good photos. My problem now is that I have too many. And I'm like, we got to stick to the package. Paula said I have to charge you for this. So, like just keeping it within the parameters, honestly, is the hardest part.
The thing is I think, and I love that you've said this, is I feel like there's a lot less pressure going into it. Obviously, you want to perform and you want to do a great job, but you don't feel like you've got this immense weight. And it's really interesting. I used to fly up and down to Sydney, as you know, to do weddings. And I went down, maybe it was this time last year, to shoot one last wedding. And it was so beautiful because it was what is probably going to be my very last wedding. And it was a backyard wedding with my old photographer who worked for me down there. She worked for me for 10 years. It was her mum's second wedding, right? So it was just this beautiful, little, small, low key. It was probably the lowest key wedding that I've done in a decade. But when I got on the plane on the way home, I felt the immense pressure of worrying so hard about those cards until they got back into I just don't feel that anymore. I just feel more in flow with things. I'm like, yep, I'll download those cards. I don't feel that compulsion. Of course, I do all the same old routines that I used to do, but I don't feel that weight of pressure.
That's just the direction of the day, like in so many ways on a wedding day, the photographer's kind of the captain. And so you're making sure everyone's on time. And even with a planner, like you're dragging this wedding party somewhere and the couple, and there's just not a lot of margin for error. And not that there is with branding photography either, but yeah, it's just a totally different pressure. It's a different weight. It's a different responsibility level. And it almost feels like I graduated into branding photography. I did the wedding work. And that's kind of the trenches, so to speak, which is horrible because these people spend so much money on their weddings. They're not trenches by any means, but in shooting someone's wedding, yes, you get like super close with them. Right. And I mean, like I just had a wedding this past weekend and it was a previous bride's mom. She and her wife finally got married after 15 years and loved the wedding, loved this family. And in a lot of ways, I was like, shit, am I going to end up doing this forever? Because this feels so good. But then I got home and I was like, no, my knee is screaming and my feet hurt. And no, I'm absolutely not doing this forever. But I did worry about missing that because you do have such a connection. And it's almost like a trauma bond, like with your wedding clients, like you're just like this wartime thing that you guys get through together. And I did worry about missing that relationship because I like the people. I'm a people person, but I haven't felt that at all. I've really connected with my branding clients and am hopeful that they come year after year, which wedding clients don't. So don't shoot families. So it's a cool blend of all the things. And it's really become even more fulfilling than I initially thought it would be.
Yeah, and I hope that everyone's hearing from both of us talking here that we're not poo-pooing our wedding careers at all, and we're not poo-pooing weddings, because I think both of us have had beautiful experiences, but your word graduate was, I think, perfect.
I'm just tired. I mean, that to be said, I wouldn't trade my, gosh, 9 years now of wedding photography for anything, because I really do think they teach you all sides of photography.
Mm,
You do have an architectural element, you do have a product photography element, you obviously have portraiture work, you have candids, which involves reading the room and waiting on people to laugh in their conversation. And, it's such a blend of all things. I wouldn't trade that for the world, but I'm very happy to let someone with newer knees and elbows than me come in and fill that void.
yeah, I think the main thing, like I know for a lot of the wedding photographers that I know listen to this podcast and they DM me, the insecurity is letting go of the income, right? Because you've got this sort of projected income 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ahead. How have you found that sort of like shifting of certainty around, that kind of like income? Or have you just replaced the income and you feel confident that we're good going forward?
Oh, I totally haven't. It's super scary. No, I mean, I get it because like I know how to shoot weddings. I know how to get wedding work because I have relationships with planners and with vendors and venues and that kind of thing. And I've honestly just transitioned that into my branding work as well. I really think relationships are the key to anything. I think that's probably true with most industries, but I really think that here as well. It's like my dentist is a client of mine now. It's everywhere. You just have to kind of be open to talking to people and putting it out there. And so I am lucky in that I am married and that my husband has income, so that certainly alleviates things. But I made twice this year what I made at my highest paying year at my previous job. So I know.
Boom! I'm sorry.
But
That is so exciting. I did not know that. That is so
it's
cool.
it's crazy. It's just crazy. But and again, it's just kind of very much the shoulders of giants. I just feel like my whole career was on a bit of a springboard for the people that surround me, not just my old boss. I mean, he was absolutely a mentor. Like I called him coach for 8 years because he felt more like a coach than a boss. But even my really close friends that were photographers that worked with me there as well, like I have a group text with 6 other photographers that I literally could not quantify the value of that group chat. Like
Yeah.
we ask each other questions like, how are you guys handling this? What point do you switch to an escort? Whatever. Just having that sense of community is really comforting and encouraging and doesn't make me feel like I'm going to fail and lose all of our money and lose our house and like the state's going to take my dog. It's so there is that element, but I'm really understanding the value of creating relationships and nurturing them and just kind of understanding that clients are not only repeat clients, but they have their own circles. And so, like my dentist, we finished her shoot, super happy. And she's like, I know 4 more dentists involved in any brand shoots. And I'm like, sweet. Have them call me, and that's been true with multiple touch points of clients. And so it's really just kind of been this very organic thing that's just gone really well.
Work begets work. I 100% think that. Like if,
Work begets work.
you just have to get
And
out there in
like,
some capacity and be seen. So I think a lot of people when I've got this perfect, when I've got my website perfect, when all of the ducks are in a row, that never happens.
yeah, I'm big on the like being farmers market ready, like you're good enough and probably, I forget what podcast it was, but someone was talking about effectively that of like, you have a product and you get it farmers market ready. And in 5 years, you should look back and be embarrassed by what you put out.
Yeah.
But it's a starting point, right? And then you finesse it and then you hone it, but it gives you something to start with. And so I was pretty realistic about that of, like my little Squarespace website. And I, as you know, am not great about social media, but I have found the keys of things that are working out to be successful for me. And that's networking groups. That's become a huge, huge part of my time and energy and just the community that I'm in, just people I talk to, sitting at a bar, sitting in a restaurant, everybody's got something and every conversation's valuable, even if it's not professionally valuable, it turns into something. And so I think, yeah, work begets work and trying to operate in a survival of the nicest. And anytime I've operated from a capacity of generosity, even when I was like really annoyed by something, it's always come back tenfold every time.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to really remember that. And so far it's been okay.
And that's that community that you're in is non-threatening. And any networking event, if it feels threatening or if it feels like incongruent or anything like that, you just get out. I'm with you. I just think there's so much work for everybody. And I just think that the more generous you can be with the peers, the other photographers by sharing and that kind of thing, but also with businesses, do you know, like, and people, I spent yesterday, there was 5 hours yesterday of going through and helping people in my local area to get grants that the government's giving out. And one of the ladies emailed me back this morning that I've thing, and I said, she goes, "How much do I owe you for yesterday?" And I said, "You don't." I said, "I wanted to just help you to get this grant." And I said, "If you get it, we both win. You'll come and have a photo shoot with me. But if you don't, what a great exercise for you to have gone through." It was like a little business planning session. And I said, "I think you can tell that this just fills my heart to be able to do this. I'm in a position where I can give like this." And I just think it's nice to be able to get to that position and work to that position. It's not all about you and your business. It's about the community of business in this area, right?
It's true in any area. And it's true like with like the photographers in my group chat, which is demeaning to call them that because they're very much dear friends of mine. But we're all kind of like, hey, you did a really good job. You need to raise your prices. You need because I think we all kind of operate in the rising tides raise all ships, and so, her win is my win, is our win. And it's, I really like there's another kind of adage of me blowing out your candle doesn't make mine shine brighter. And so it's just a win-win. It's, if anything, if some other photographer kills it on a brand shoot and puts it all over Instagram and people love it, it's that much more people that are going, brand photography is the thing? Huh, I should probably do that too. It's impossible to chase the spider webs of situations. And so I think just kind of trying to be in that abundant mindset is just a really good place to be. And you don't have to like watch what you say as much and like, oh, I hope I didn't give a secret away, or I hope they didn't, whatever. It's like I'm very much an open book because that was also what was afforded to me. So I think
Yes.
it's the very least I can do is to kind of, with most things, you get out what you put in. And so I'm just trying to do that as best I can.
It's about you. It's just so beautiful. Now, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, you're obviously an academy student now. So I wanted to ask you, just to give a little bit of context, you went out on your own last November. So at the time of recording, it's about 11 months ago. That's correct?
Ish. So it like legally, I think I filed for Magnolia Pine Studios to be a thing in May of 2023. But I still had my full slate of weddings with my other company to shoot that year. I had 38 weddings that year. So I was still kind of consumed with that until like November-ish. And so that was when I really started thinking about it. And so, yes, you're right. That's kind of when it really became a thing. That's about the time I also found your podcast, maybe a little before that. And that was really validating. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but for no other reason than, oh, this really is a thing. I didn't just make this up. Like this can be a real thing. This is a real job. This is a real career. It's validating for sure. And just really comforting to know that someone else is doing this on the other side of the world. And then, and then Academy was what, April? Is that when we started that?
January,
no, February.
Actually.
February.
Yeah, February. Yeah. We launched it in January and then it kickstarts in February. Yeah. Yeah. So what was the impetus to do that? What made you decide to join into Academy?
It was a few things. I definitely started out a fan of your podcast. Listen, like I just mainlined every episode as fast as I could. And then kind of wavered on the idea, but a buddy of mine had hired a business coach actually from Australia. And he had really recommended it. He does dog portraits, like just dog portraits.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I think I've sent it to you. He's amazing. But he had hired a business coach. So I was kind of familiar with the concept. And then I kind of had this like, what do they call it? Like a parasocial relationship, where like you feel like you know somebody because of whatever. So I sort of had that with you. And then Academy, I kind of wavered on it. And it was one of those things I finally just pulled the plug and I was like, worst case, I'm out the money. And now I feel like I'm talking to you like I talk to my friends. I'm like, Paula, you should raise your prices. the value of Academy is just, I mean, it's truly priceless in a lot of ways. But yeah, the bang for the buck and the ROI there has just been so much more than I ever, ever expected it to be. But it just became really what I needed. The initial reason for signing up was more of an accountability buddy kind of thing, more than anything, of just having someone, kind of like I need an adult, of having someone just kind of metering it out to me. What I didn't anticipate was that you literally give us the recipe of like success. Like, here's you go. Here's your Canva template. Like you give so much in a resource way, and then you give so much of yourself personally. Like that's been a huge thing too. Even if I don't take advantage of it sometimes, just knowing there's someone in your corner, it does feel a bit like a safety net of like, if I really goof something up, I can be like, Paula, help me fix this. And so, yeah, it's been such a wonderful experience all the way around.
I love how you've actually managed to make marketing your bitch in a way that is working for you, because it's so interesting that you have a marketing degree, and this is every photographer that I meet, practically speaking. Like every person that comes into my world anyway will say, I know how to do marketing for other people. I'm really good at shining a torch on other people, but I just can't shine it on myself. It's like,
I go back and forth constantly with what to say with Magnolia Pine. I'm like, do I say I or we? Because it's so much easier to be like, we love doing this, but there's no we. I am the we. So it's been a very like mental struggle to be like, no, I'm the I'm the we. I like but yeah, it's just a wild ride all the way around.
You've been able to find quite a quirky voice though, which I enjoy. Like it's your truth, like I feel like I've been able to see you become more and more like feeling more like you in the way that I see you writing. And do you know what I mean? Like it just feels like I've watched that evolve and I've really enjoyed that.
That's an interesting perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's probably just that I have a really shit poker face. And so I'm like, this is what you're getting, But thank you for saying that. That's definitely the goal.
I also think it's great to watch what, and I sort of say this to people who are coming into Academy, you can't possibly do everything that's inside of this program over the course of the year, because we are literally catering to a lot of different people on different levels, but I'm very comfortable to say to you, Brooke, you don't need to come along to this because you've got this, you've nailed this. So it's really nice to have seen you come in and then you go out and I can see you come in and you kind of like go tick, yep, got that, I'm good. And then you're gone for another month or two. And I'm like, sometimes when I don't see people coming, I'm like, yes, that either means they're on holidays or they're really busy. Either way, it doesn't bother me. Like they've got what they need.
Yeah, their bandwidth is not here right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is amazing to me how you thread a needle of how many students you have, because you do a good job of like, you don't teach to the middle, like you somehow talk to each of us in a very applicable way. I don't know how you do that. That is witchcraft, but it's very cool how you weave that.
It's a big part of what I do is make sure that I know every single person in the room. Yeah, I have I specifically, how we did those calls at the start of the year too, to just so I could know what your goals are and stuff like that. Like that's a big thing about the way I want to deliver, because I've been in those courses before where it just felt like generic stuff. And I'm like, it's good. It's cookie cutter. It's good for them, but not good for everybody. So for me, I want to make sure that, I don't know, I just want to make sure everybody builds the business that works for their life, not that works for mine, and here go and try it on for size and then figure out that it doesn't work,
Which is amazing. And I definitely was expecting the cookie cutter, of like, here's how I have made. And what I was really expecting was to see how you did it and then try to figure out how to make it my own. And I did not have to do that translation because you met me where I was the whole time.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. Thank you so much for giving me that feedback. Let's move on to, you touched on it where you are right now. What are some of the cool things that have happened to you this year because you are doing personal branding? Cool things, experiences, or people. I don't mind. I'll take all of it.
I've had all of it. I say a lot. It's kind of like that my camera gets me in rooms I don't belong in. And I'm like very often the dumbest person in the room in a very cool way. But like I've had some like really banger clients. Like I shot for Google in Aspen a couple of times, and that was obviously awesome. I've had, I was touching on one of my clients that's a mineral rights guy. Like his company is literally the minerals guy. But it's been really fascinating to see all these little subgenres of society that I didn't even know existed, much less were sources of income. So just that kind of like anthropological study has been really, really cool. I've really connected with a couple of my clients that we have since become friends and had personal drinks on the side. That's been a really rewarding thing. And just, again, kind of what we were saying of seeing my little contribution to someone's business really catapult them to where they belonged the whole time, but they didn't know they belonged there. And being able to give them the springboard for that is just a really cool thing. But yeah, I've traveled a lot this year. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina right now, been to Savannah and New Orleans and Salt Lake. Where else? I've traveled a lot. That's been awesome. It's always nice staying in a free hotel, right? So that's always a good thing. But it's just I really value where my camera takes me, and then I really value what people say to me when they're not pointing it at them. Like you take your picture, whatever, and then you have a really cool conversation with someone that you never would have met otherwise, never would have known anything about otherwise, may not vote the same, which is a touchy subject right here in the States right now. And I don't know, it's really interesting. I think I'm most grateful for the conversations that it's afforded more than anything else.
I so love this conversation. Again, I've got goosebumps because this is exactly what Alison and I were talking about yesterday. We were having a conversation and we got off on a tangent. We're trying to work and then we get on this tangent. We're like for 45 minutes, we were having this exact same thing. We were saying just literally meeting people who you vibe with and that you can just learn so much from. And I get into the same as you. I get to see the inside of people's businesses or the mechanics of things or even the reason why they go to work. Like a lot of my clients are kind of like in it, yes, for the money, but it's because of this charity organization that they have over here. That's the why. And we spend all this time talking about that. And I'm like, oh my God, that is just so impactful. I just love this industry for that reason. Yeah.
Because they're not like shallow, superficial conversations. Like you get to the meat and guts with people quickly. And so you just have these like really like I care a lot about my clients. And I'm like, I don't know you that well, but I do know you that well. It's a really interesting dynamic that just those relationships bring. It's very interesting how honest you get right out of the gate. Because a lot of times they're talking about their insecurities, right? Like that's usually what kicks it off. And so then it's oh no, you shouldn't feel this way. Let's fix it. Let's talk about what you're insecure here. And it's usually a physical thing, but then that always into and then this happened, and this is the why for this, or the why not, or the whatever their journey is. You really kind of get to the heart of it in a very expedited way. But not in like a fake way. Like it's very organic and natural, but there's a depth there that I don't think that I wouldn't have without my camera. I don't think.
How beautiful. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap on. I love it. I'm just going to ask you one question for anybody who's listening to this, who's sort of sitting on the fence about dipping their toe into personal branding, because I know that there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who are sort of like, will I, won't I, will I, won't I? What would you say to those people?
Oh my God, do it. Like, do it yesterday. But it's just such a cool little world to be in. It's such a unique, and to me, I find very fascinating industry. And for the exact same reasons that we said, of like how you become a part of someone's journey, not just their business, not just their like headshot on LinkedIn or their email signature or whatever. Like you really are you're on the ride with them, and vice versa, because they're obviously now a part of my business. Like the bond that you have there is just really powerful and cool. And again, like it's just a very calm world, especially if you're coming from weddings or family portraits or things where you can't necessarily control all the circumstances. Like to have that on top of the relationship side of it, on top of the beautiful imagery side of it. I mean, to me, it's just such a win-win-win in my world. Now that I'm here, I cannot imagine doing anything else. And the nice thing too, is this is something I can do for a long time. I can very much be a brand photographer at 60. There's no way in hell I would be shooting a wedding at 45, much less 50, 55, 60. So this is not only just cool that I've gotten here. What I find very cool is that I can stay here.
Mm.
And your clients become repeat clients, which makes you further ingratiated in their business and their life. So that's very cool. You don't have to do as much hunting as the years go on. I think that's also just kind of a very comforting thing for me this will be, quote, the hardest year in a lot of ways, I feel like, right? Like just trying to get the impetus of all this going. But now that I'm here and there's some momentum, it just feels really exciting for, what the next 18 months, 5 years, 10 years will look like.
Yeah.
So please do it. Please do personal branding photography.
Here's to
Please do it.
2026 and no more weddings.
Oh my God. Again, love my wedding clients.
I know. And this is the thing. And look, do you know what? In working through this program over the last, 4 or 5 years that I've been sort of teaching photographers, I've seen definitely over a dozen photographers that were full-time wedding photographers transition into branding. And every now and then I'll just send them like a little, how's it going? And they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. I never knew.
I may FaceTime you on my first free Saturday next summer. Like I'm doing nothing. Just look, I'm doing nothing. It's the best. That's the other thing with brand photography is it's a workday, weekday activity.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be messing with this on a Saturday or Sunday. So I can't even imagine what it's going to be like to have a weekend.
They definitely don't want to be doing stupid hours and they don't want to be working with you after 5 o'clock. Like it's just like, it's win all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, short of like mini shoot days, like you're usually done in 4-6 hours tops.
Mm-hmm.
Where that's just the best. And there's so much downtime too. It's not like this is hectic, just like bang it out in 4 or 6 hours. It's like, no, we're going to have a coffee and, change your clothes. And it's just so refreshing.
I really enjoy the lack
experience.
Of time. Yeah, I enjoy the lack of time restraints.
Yes.
My team will always laugh at me because they'll go, what time were we due to be finished? And I'm like, oh, probably about 3. And they go, yeah, so that means 4. And I'm like, if it takes us that way, sure. Do you know?
Yeah,
so long as the client's good for it, I'm good for it.
That's kind of my thing. I'm like, go touch up your face. I got all day, and and that's the thing too of like when brand shoots are kind of wrapping up, I'm always like, do you want to do another hour? Because it's so fun. Like I want to do another hour. Like, let's just see what happens. And I'm trying to be better. Boundaries, Paula, trying to be better about boundaries.
Do you know what? If you're enjoying it and if they're enjoying it, I'm so here for it. Like I will never tell anybody. I mean, I'll shoot. And this is the thing. I don't care what you put in front of me on a day like that. I'll shoot it. Like I'm so here for anything that helps you to have more, but you do need to make sure that you are charging for it afterwards if you are giving them more.
It is a business. It is. But yeah, I mean, even those things, like I was doing this shoot with my dentist the other day and she pulls out these like a teeth mold kind of thing. And I'm like, what? Why? And she showed me all about how her loops work. And like, I'm learning about my own mouth because she's my dentist. And, just these like random conversations they're just fun. It's just so much fun.
The only problem I will say is that I walk out from a lot of shoots wanting to do and be the clients of the people that I photograph. So I did a dentist that do porcelain veneers and I came away going, right, that's it. I'm in for porcelain veneers. I go and do a Pilates studio. I'm like, I want to go to their studio. I go and do a beauty salon. I'm like, I want to be your client. I want to have that experience.
I definitely have that chameleon experience as well, which is how it's going well. If you're like, can I be a little bit of you and a little bit of you? And, worst case, it makes us interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have loved this chat. I'm really, really grateful for you to coming on board. I know that getting on a podcast can be a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes, so I really appreciate you doing
this.
For
as nervous as I was, this was so easy. Thank you so much.
Oh, great stuff. Okay, well, if people want to find more of you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop some links into the chat so they can go and check you out.
Perfect. I was going to say they can see all 6 of my Instagram posts because I'm terrible at it. But I did have one this week, so we're working on it.
Well, let's talk about that just for a quick second before we wrap officially. So I want to go back to that conversation we're talking about marketing where you were saying, like, you say that you've only got 6 Instagram posts. The fact of the matter is that that you've learned that you don't necessarily need to have a prolific activity on there, right? You just need to have a base level presence. Your marketing.
Yeah, for me, I'm not finding work through Instagram, but I do think it's important to show relevancy,
Mhm.
for nothing else of like, I am in business. So, I'm trying to do better about at the very least posting a story when I'm traveling. Like there was a beautiful sunset here in Charlotte tonight. Probably should have taken a picture of it and put it on Instagram. So yeah, I'm again going back to being mindful of what's the best use of quote time and talent. I don't think for me social media is it's not an instinct for me, and I know you and I have had this conversation separately of like it's not the first thing I think of is to post something on social media or Instagram or whatever, but I do absolutely see the value of it. So I'm very much in this like do as I say, not as I do kind of phase of business.
I think you can use it just like you'd use Google. Do you know, like if someone's going to
Mm-hmm.
go and search their, like if they go to Google, is your Google profile up to date? Does it lead to the website? If you go to Instagram, is it up to date? Is it current? Does it look
Right.
like you're in business? And then it leads to your website. Like to be honest with you, I think that's that can be very, very effective strategy. And for anyone listening, please be okay with that if that's who you are, and then find another activity that makes sense for you, like you have done, Brooke, with your networking.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely for where anybody is, and I can speak specifically to the Denver and the Colorado community. We have incredible networking groups. NACE is a big one. I mean, there's some for weddings as well, but it's networking groups I have found wild success in, and I know they're really intimidating to walk into because you don't know anybody, and like that's the worst. But then I kind of had this realization one day of I'm like, oh, they're all also here to network. And everybody else is also kind of nervous. It's why there's an open bar. Got it. And then you just have to have that first conversation. And the next thing you know, there's four people at your table. And then, it's so I think just realizing that everybody kind of feels the same way you do makes it a lot easier to walk in the door. That's by far the hardest part is leaving your house and walking in that door. Right. And then once you get there, then you find out it's fine. Much like this podcast, we're super nervous about it. And you're like, no, you're just having a conversation. But there's so much value in that, if only to hear how they're running their business, much less if they turn into clients. So I think, yeah, for branding, especially networking groups.
I've always believed with networking is that you go in willing to give and not looking to take. And then
I
and
like that.
find the group with people who are filled for the same reason, because I think a lot of people go to one networking event and they expect to book 3 clients. And it's just that's not a realistic strategy. It's long-term relationships.
Yeah, you can't it's not a quantifiable thing with dollars and cents. It's building relationships. It's you're reaping and sowing more than you are trying to meet a quota.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think of that with any marketing activities. It's always a long-term game, but
Mhm.
I think particularly with networking, I've been to those places where it's literally, okay, give me your card. Do you know, here's my card. They force the card in
And
your face and just like,
what are
dude.
you're going to throw that card away because you're like, I don't even remember who this belongs to. And I spent so much time making my business cards. I was like that was one of the first things I did. I love them. I will say that I love them. They're like the soft touch from Moo, whatever, but that's so not what it's all about at all.
I know, I know. But look, in the early days of your business, you kind of make all those mistakes. I spent thousands of dollars on printed materials back in 2013 when I first moved here. And I was like, and I've got them still stuck in the garage. I think I might have
Oh yeah.
made my way through like half a box of like out of 3 boxes or something. So.
I have thousands of business cards. So,
Oh,
I'm gonna go
God.
make it rain from an airplane or something. Yeah, but it's fine, but that's it too. Like it's your business. So if you want to go get 50 water bottles and 3,000 business cards because it's fun, that's okay. I'm all for doing what feels good and gets you to the next step.
100%, 100%. Well, I have to say, chatting with you today has felt really good to me. So thank you so much for deciding to come on board and sharing so beautifully. Like just the way that you share about what you've done in the last 12 months is just so, so wonderful to see and so lovely for me to hear. So thank you.
Well, this was a joy. Thank you so much. My running joke is that you're my Sue Bryce. And so it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Brooke.